And I'm honored to have Miko Branch, co-founder and CEO of Miss Jessie's, with us today. She and her sister TT built a company that essentially went from the kitchen table to becoming a multi-million-dollar company. They started the business with no money that today contributes to, honestly, building the self-esteem of so many women. Honestly, seriously, I mean this with all my heart. It's really about more than just hair. And so thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Well, again, my name is Miko, and I'm one of the co-founders of Miss Jessie's, the business that I started with my sister TT Branch, and we have a hair care business. And back in the early 2000s, we decided to specialize in curls, kinks, and waves. Back then, when I looked around, I didn't see too many women rocking their hair like this, but I'm so excited to look out in any audience, including this one, and see so many women who look like us. One of our very first models, whoever rocked or sported a wash and go using Miss Jessie's, but not only using Miss Jessie's, but really showing off, this as a hairstyle. She's here today. Her name is Miss Dominga Martin. She was a Miss Jessie client while Titi and I started our business from scratch in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. So can you just stand up? Yeah. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for your patience. There was a lot of traffic today, but I'm just so delighted to be here. Thank you.
We're happy to have you, for sure. So I feel like we should jump into talking about this book. Honestly, I read it cover to cover. It's amazing. So many personal stories interjected with so much wisdom. Yeah. But what I want to ask, I feel like anyone could look up, what inspired you to write the book, why you decided to come out with it now. What I want to ask is, what was the hardest thing about writing this book?
Well, it went in stages. So while we were writing the book, we were running Miss Jessie's. And we don't have any partners, we don't have any investors, so Titi and I were really running our own business. So finding the time to get our story down was at first the most challenging. But then it was after my sister died on December 4th. The book still hadn't been finished, and I had to do the finishing touches on the book. But before I did that, I needed to decide, did it make sense for me to come out with our story? Because honestly, when my sister died, I didn't want to talk to nobody. I didn't want to talk about our story. I couldn't see myself having an interview. It was just devastating. So I talked with my family about it, and we decided that it was so important that I come out and publish this book, because Titi's story is so important, in addition to history that we've made together. So we decided, don't stop, keep moving forward, and I'm so glad I did.
Definitely, and you have some hard moments in that book, specifically with you and your sister. You even talk about the time that you and her really had disagreements within the company, and she actually ended up suing you. So was that difficult to put in the book at this point, and what made you want to keep that part in there?
Well, when Titi and I decided to write the book, we decided that we wanted to give real stories, true stories of what happened, what a partnership looks like, what it really means to go into business with your sibling. I know when a lot of you guys see Titi and I, maybe some of you know our personal story, but maybe many of you don't. And I think at the end of this, at the end of the day, you see a really cute jar of curly pudding, and you may not understand what it took to get there. And when Titi and I decided we wanted to write the book, we wanted to be as transparent as possible. So because she died, that didn't change what the intention was, and I wanted to stay true to that intention. Titi and I actually wanted to get into it a bit further about our dispute and what it entailed and how it really affected us. But we were able to touch on it in a nice way, without us getting too without us getting into too much detail, but I'm glad we did because it's people like you who read it, and I'm sure there's some lessons in there.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And going to the lessons now, you say in the book, and I think it's so clever, that this is essentially the blueprint to create waves, if you get it, curls, waves, create waves in any industry that you choose. So what do you feel like is the number one skill that you need to disrupt an industry?
I really have to reference Titi and I, and if there was one thing that held true was no fear. No fear, and I think Titi and I had, and particularly Titi, she had a healthy distance to the beauty industry. She was exposed to it through me, but she had a healthy enough distance to it where she was able to come up with new ideas, come up with new approaches, instead of doing things the standardized way, the stale way in which many people had done business in the beauty industry. So she didn't really experience any fear, and through that partnership with her, I was able to do things my way, and just forge ahead. There were times where we made mistakes, and we paid for them dearly. But I would definitely say no fear when you're trying to do whatever it is you want to do. That's one of the things that really set me and Titi up in this business properly, is the fact that we just did it. We didn't think about what the consequences were.
Yeah, I like the story of even how you guys got into Ricky's, how you just marched into Ricky's in Soho and you found someone that worked there and you were like, why isn't our product on your shelves? And I'm like, wow, that sounds like something that I would do, honestly. Yeah. And anyone in the audience who knows me knows that that's true.
And much of our approach to Ms. Jessie's and our business was really just an extension of who we were. We didn't really get the blueprint on how you approach distribution. We didn't get the class on how you go to the next level in your business. So most of the moves that Titi and I, most of the moves that we did were just things that we would normally do through friendships, through our relationships. We decided that something like Ricky's was a place that we liked, and we just thought, our product should be there.
And you mentioned no fear and going forward without fear, but there were scary moments that you and TT had to go through. So in those scary moments, how did you find the courage? What did you tap into? And then could you just give an example of one scary moment and how you moved through it?
Well, Titi and I had many scary moments together and separately. But what happens is when those scary moments happen, we didn't really have the luxury to be scared. The mortgage was due. My son was cold. There was no heat in our brownstone. We had just bought a brownstone in Bedford-Stuyvesant, but we had also made some really bad moves in our business. We had a salon in Boerum Hill, Brooklyn. We made some bad decisions, so we had to move our business to our brownstone. So we didn't really have the luxury to let fear set in, and we had to plunge ahead because my son was hungry. Titi, we just had things to do, so we didn't have time to really let it set in.
And I think another good example is the Target story. If you could touch on that a little bit, that would be, I think, the perfect example of what we're talking about here.
So when Target called us, which is a huge deal because Target doesn't usually make that call to two girls in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, to tell us that they want us to be in their mass channel, mass chain. So when we got that call, we were so geeked up and we were so green. But you have to understand, Titi is extremely smart. I'm an extremely good hairstylist, but we had no practice in dealing with mass channels. But we knew it was an opportunity. We knew we wanted Miss Jessie's in Target, so we went with it. But we also understood that we didn't understand this game. And Target is a metaphor. I'm talking about mass channels. They have all kind of games that they play. And it usually costs the vendor. So Titi and I, if you want to use, a color, we were green. And we signed every single contract that this mass channel put in front of us because we were just so excited that our product from Bedford-Stuyvesant had made it into Target. And there were some lessons we needed to learn. We needed to learn that you don't sign contracts without your attorney. We needed to learn that those percentages that they want to charge us that didn't make sense shouldn't stick. We learned so many lessons, but it was all very concentrated. And at a certain point, we needed to make a decision. And we needed to make a decision about staying in Mass. Was this new partner the right partner for us? And at one point, we really had to let our partner know where our principles lied. And we made a really big move, and we made a really big stand with Target. It was probably one of the scariest things we've ever done.
My mouth dropped when I read that.
You got to read the book to find out what it was exactly. But we found ourselves having to stand up to our most profitable partner. And you have to understand, we're two girls from Brooklyn. Our family was so proud of us. We didn't want to disappoint all of the natural heads that were out here that were really rooting for us just to be in Target, and for us to in any way jeopardize that because we wanted to stand by our principles. We felt like what we were doing was crazy, but we did it anyway. So that was a very scary moment.
And you didn't have contacts, you didn't have investors, you didn't have any backing. It was just you. And I find that very interesting because so many of the decisions that you made and so many of the things that you took a chance on was based off your instincts and your gut. And that's really important as an entrepreneur. People say, your aha moments, listen to the whispers, try to listen to, what your gut tells you. How do you hone in on that skill? How do you develop that and really know whether or not it's the right thing to do and right thing to listen to?
I think at the end of the day, I think that listening to your gut is probably the best thing you can do. The most important relationship that probably any of us will have is that hopefully we have a wonderful relationship with God. But another very important relationship you're going to have is the one that you have with yourself. So if you're doing things and you're going against your own gut, you still have to deal with yourself because you have that voice in your head that says, you didn't do that right. So really staying level with that voice in your head is everything, and trusting your gut is everything. So at the end of the day, if things don't go wrong, you can't blame Dominga. It's not your fault, Dominga. It's my fault. And blaming Dominga it's a different experience to blame someone else. It's your fault that happened versus it's my fault. So when the responsibility lies here, then you tend to want to do things right because you don't want to be at fault when it comes to bad decisions or decisions that don't really work in your favor. So that's what I tap into when I'm learning, when I'm operating out here and trusting my gut. I want to make the decisions that are best for me, and at the end of the day, I don't want to be in a position where I'm blaming someone else. So I have to just trust it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of decisions that you made that got you to where you are today. And I want to talk about specifically your career decisions. Career Agenda is a website where we focus on career development and those moments where you have to decide, okay, what path am I going to go down? You had an interesting path. You started out at community college, left, enrolled in FIT, got a degree in fashion, ended up enrolling in hair school after that. And so all of those decisions that you made kind of went against the grain. And I remember you talked about when you enrolled in hair school, how your parents were like, you're going to make a career out of doing hair? What kind of career is that? So can you talk about those decisions that led up to where you are now and just what you felt in those moments and how you were able to push past, all the naysayers, even your closest family members?
Yeah, so even as a younger Miko, I was always listening to my gut, and I was paying attention to not only the things that I wanted to do, not only paying attention to the things I thought I might like to do, I was also paying attention to the things that I did not want to do. And it was 50-50. So I used to create a list for myself. I know in fashion school, these projects take too long, and I'm going to need an investor if I want to have my own line. So the day I graduate from FIT, guess what? Miko's not going into a career for fashion design, right? And I made a decision to go into, to enroll in hair school. Why? Because it was easy, and I was so good at it. So, a lot of us, particularly, in my family, my parents put a lot of emphasis on like a traditional education, although my mother was an artist. And I just found like that traditional approach, university, it was so boring to me. I couldn't imagine like having a career doing what? Like an extension of this? And I just wanted to be happy, and I wanted to be good, and I wanted to be confident at what I did. And I always knew I wanted to be my own boss, so I knew I had to do things my way, and I had to do things the right way. And I was always good at doing hair. So once I graduated from FIT, because I needed to graduate because I didn't want to hear my dad talking about me, telling me that you went up in there and you didn't finish that school. So I finished that, and I decided that I was going to do something that I was good at. And that was a really important decision, and that was me trusting my gut still as a younger Miko.
Yeah, It's not easy when you're young.
Yeah.
And just going back to the fact that you guys had no investment, as Black women in business in general, the odds are stacked against us. We're the least likely to get investment. We're the least likely to have the contacts and the resources. And still, bills need to be paid. We still need some place to live. So a lot of the time we'll start a business, but then we have to take on a side job or some type of side hustle. And you, at one point, had to bartend. I remember I read that, and that really shocked me. And I just wanted to get some insight from you about, when you had to take those side jobs and things like that, how did you maintain your focus and your energy on your main goal, which was Miss Jessie's?
So Titi and I were no strangers to hard work. When we were kids, around 7 and 8, my dad put us to work. He raised us as boys, so Titi and I would do everything from sand floors to spackle walls to help my dad. So we had a work ethic already instilled in us. So when it came time to do things to supplement maybe a home hair salon that wasn't really cutting it in terms of, I didn't have a whole bunch of customers. I would have to do things to make rent. And, Titi and I were not too fly to get out there and try something else in order for us to cover our bills. And you also have to understand, Titi and I never used our looks, and we never used men to get money. Because at the end of the day, our father told us that there was an exchange and there was a trade-off. So whatever we wanted, my dad raised us to believe that we had to work hard to get it, and that usually required hard work. So if whatever business we were in didn't make enough money so we could do things like cover rent, we would get second jobs. And Titi also was no stranger to a second job. And we did what we had to do to make ends meet. And one other thing that Titi and I did was we pooled our resources together. Titi and I wore clothes for many years, probably all the way up till around 2010. We lived together, we shared food, we drove the same car. And while many of our friends were hanging out and spending a lot of money hanging out, and they were having so much fun, we weren't. We were saving our money and making sure we had a roof over our head and made sure we had operating money to do maybe the next venture that we wanted to get into. So that's a way that we teamed up, and we were able to build money slowly by using our talent to gain capital.
How did you keep from getting burnt out, though, if you always constantly had to work and grind and do everything to keep a roof over your head?
I don't know. But you know what? I think my desire, I don't like people telling me what to do. And I've worked for other people, and it just bothers me when people tell me what to do. And I thought that there was nothing more horrible than that. So everything else that I had to do in order to avoid that scenario where people are telling me what to do, I was willing to do that because I didn't want to go to work and have a boss, because it just didn't rest with my spirit.
That just wasn't a good boss then, because actually today I read a quote that said the best bosses don't tell you what to do, but they empower you with the information so that you make the decisions that you want to make for what you need to do to get your job done. So
that's a good observation, and that's probably true. I didn't have good bosses.
So your book has so many personal stories, but I love the little the sidebars where you break out the lesson that you need to be taking from that personal story. And one of my favorite lessons is be bold. It is always possible to rewrite the rules if you dare to ask. What are some of the rules that you and your sister had to break to get to where you are today?
So many. We're pioneers in the natural hair movement, and this is two girls who we didn't get the blueprint. We didn't know that there was an industry that we could impact, but just simply by taking a moment that I had at bath time and turning that into $1 million business was huge. It was moments like that that we dared be different.
What would you say, just kind of take us through the story a little bit of you guys going from your brownstone to now the multi-million-dollar company that exists today? Obviously, you detail it in the book, but just, the short version of the story so we could get some insight of the key moments that happened.
So we got to my brownstone, our brownstone. First of all, we purchased a brownstone in Bedford-Stuyvesant in '99. That's when Bed-Stuy was the hood. Wasn't the Bed-Stuy you guys know now. And that was when no one wanted to come to get their hair done in Bed-Stuy, because when you got off the train, you had to see the dudes on the corner, and you had to walk past them, and it was loud. But we bought our brownstone in '99. We bought our brownstone before we made some bad decisions, and we got kicked out of a salon in Boerum Hill, and it was a salon on Bond Street.
Good area.
Yeah. So we got kicked out of that salon. We had to move our business, and we ran an illegal operation in Bedford-Stuyvesant. My attorney is standing right there, and he's giving me the look.
Yeah, it's honestly, if you have the book, fascinating to read about how when they started making the products in their basement, how they were trying to hide it.
Yeah. So we're in Bedford-Stuyvesant, and now I'm a pregnant Miko, and I'm about to have a baby. I knew my son's dad was not going to be involved in our lives in any way, so I knew I was not going to have a baby's daddy. So that was another factor that was going on. It was bath time. And if you wanted to get your hair done by me, you had to come to the hood, because I knew that I did not want to send my son to a daycare, because I knew his dad wasn't going to be around. So it was really important that me and my son had a very close connection. So I did hair in the house, and I cared for my son on the upper floor. During bath time, I used to like to wear my hair straight. I like to look like Kimora Lee Simmons. But I, at bath time, my son splashing all over the place, I could no longer keep my straight hair straight, so my hair would shrink up. And at the time, I had some relaxer still in it, because during my pregnancy, I'd relax it a little bit, but then I wouldn't. So when my hair turned from straight and went back to some kind of texture, my clients had to see me with hair that looked similar to this. And that started a conversation. That conversation was everything, because quickly Titi and I refocused our business, and you also have to understand our main focus in our prior salon business was straight hair. Once we refocused our whole format in the business, and I got really good at doing curly hair, and it would be women like Dominga that would come to our salon, and I would turn kinks to curls. That was my specialty. I turned kinks to curls. I discovered that women of color, we don't have just kinky hair. Many of us have curly hair. That was a huge discovery, and I needed product to support everything that I wanted to do. But at the time, there wasn't any curly pudding, any curly buttercream. There was no Targets. There were no competitors. There was nothing. There was black gel. There was pink oil. There was Afro Sheen. There was hard gel. Those were the things that were available, but at the time, those things were not marketed to women who wanted to wear their hair curly. Why? Many women of color didn't even know they had curly hair. We always believed we had kinky hair. Some of us believed we had bad hair. Mm-hmm. So you have to understand this point too. Not only were Titi and I trying to do curls and kinks and waves, we had to also change the mindset. We also had to tell our customer what they had, because when they walked in our brownstone, they didn't understand that they had gold on top of their head. So that was, we were doing so many things. So that desire to really support all that we needed to do, it really took concentration, and it took a lot of dedication from Titi and I. So guess what? We took it back to what we knew, and when we grew up and we saw that there wasn't anything available, we saw our grandmother whip things up at her kitchen table from scratch. What was she whipping up? She was whipping up her own icing. She was making her own mayonnaise. She was doing everything. She was making her own dressing for her own chopped barbecue. She didn't use barbecue sauce. And we saw this resourceful woman whip things up at her kitchen table. And guess what? We were in the same situation that she was in when a local store didn't carry the things that she wanted. We had the same scenario. We had this market. We had this hair type that we wanted to support, but there was nothing out there. So guess what? We whipped it up at our kitchen table. So we took a little bit of this, mixed it with a little bit of that, because that product was too hard. That product, the color is too black. We don't like how it looks when you put it on your edges. That product is too greasy. And finally, we just kept mixing and mixing and mixing till we came up with something, and that we was Titi. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and Titi came in my room, woke me up, and said, "Oh my God, Miko, wake up." And what she was holding was curly pudding. And when I saw that curly pudding, I knew we had it. And that desire to support all the things that we wanted to do, it came from here, and it came from being resourceful. So when Target finally called, it wasn't that we were trying to get them to call us. Target had seen our hard work. Target had also understood that relaxer sales were down. You guys were no longer buying relaxers. Why? Because you discovered that you have hair like this, and there's things you can do with it, and you wanted to find out all the other things you can do with it. So no one was buying relaxers. They were down by around 30%, and Target wanted to understand why. Target is still a metaphor. I'm talking about mass channels. And they wanted to understand, why are these sales down? But the other thing that was going on is, and I'm sorry I'm taking you all around the bush, because this is important.
This story. It intertwines everything we've been talking about.
This is important. You guys weren't spending money on relaxers anymore. You guys were experimenting. You guys understood that what you had on your head was something that you liked, something that you wanted to explore more, so you weren't buying these relaxers. The other thing that was going on in the mass channel was this mass retailer looked at a particular consumer and looked at her and said, "You know what? I'm not going to light those aisles. I'm not going to make those shelves pretty, because that customer only spends $2.99 on an oil moisturizer for her hair. So I'm going to disregard her." But when the mass channel found out that you ladies are willing to spend $58 on a jar of baby buttercream, $28 on a jar of curly pudding to give you the results that you want, guess what? They were interested in you, and they wanted you back in the store. Why? Because when you're in Target or when you're in Walmart to buy your curly pudding, you're going to pick up a box of Tide. You're going to get your tampons. You're going to get your dishwashing detergent. And this customer was a valuable customer that was overlooked for many years. So it was very important to get you guys back in a particular way. So it was no mystery. It was a mystery and surprise to Titi and I, because we didn't understand what was going on in mass. But it was very deliberate that we got a call, and Target wanted us in their store. And that's how it happened.
Awesome. And you talk about mistakes a lot. You made a lot of mistakes. And people say that all the time, setbacks are setups for a comeback. And it almost sounds cliche, to be honest, because you hear it so much. But reading your book, it's so clear that it's very true for you and TT when building Miss Jessie's. So can you give an example of one mistake that led to a success, or actually set you up for success?
So most of our career has been a bunch of trial and error. That's why it's taken us so long to build Miss Jessie's. But one setback was I'll bring up two. One setback was we grew too quickly. Titi and I got really gassed up that our salon was busy. This is when we had a 2-chair salon downtown Brooklyn, and we expanded too quickly, and we lost that salon. That was the first setback. And thank God that happened, because had we not been in the position to move our business to the brownstone, we would have never had any reason to be innovative and think outside of the box and come up with, a new format like curls, kinks, and waves. And that would have never having to come up with the curly pudding. So that was one. Another one was Titi and I had always been sisters, partners, friends, roommates. We were helpmates. And Titi had always been my big sister. And we were raised in New York, Queens and Brooklyn. And anyone who knows Titi and I, they know us as Titi and Miko, or Miko and Titi. That's just because we were always together. But it was in 2006 when my sister decided she wanted to be mad at me, and she wanted to sue me and have a fight with me and have a dispute with me. That was probably one of the best things that ever happened for our business, because it was during that time that I really had to grow up, and I really had to understand what it feels like to not have my sister. I had to understand what it took to run a business by myself, because before that I had always had my sister. Titi learned lessons, what it's like to be in business without me. So we learned things separate apart from one another. But that experience was very, very painful, and it was very hard on us as sisters and friends. But it was really good for the business, because when we reunited back in 2008, we had new experiences to bring to our business and to our sisterhood, that when something like, a mass channel came along later, we had less fear because we had some experiences. And we weren't too fearful of many people. And then we had these independent experiences that made our stomachs stronger. And I think that was one of the best things that ever happened to Titi and I as sisters, and also as business partners, those uncomfortable moments that you learn from. And then when you get a chance to do it all over again, you do it bigger, stronger, better, and faster. So when we got back together in 2008, we had to make up for some lost time, because during the time Titi and I were apart, the competitors started coming. We saw the ones that had the logo like Miss Jessie. Wow. We had the two girls over there. We had this product over there, and now Miss Jessie's didn't sit on Ricky's shelves alone. We had neighbors. So while me and her were getting out all of our frustration, because Titi and I had never really had a fight. I was 36 in 36 years. We had never really had a fight. So we had one big one that was around 2 years that made up for all the time. There were other things that were happening in the marketplace. So when we got back together, we needed to really make up for lost time. So those things motivated us, and it propelled us to the next level. And we did. We made up. We did a lot in those 2 years before Target called in 2010.
I think that says a lot about you as an entrepreneur. I'm honestly in awe of how you're able to reflect on situations and pull out the lesson from it. Not many people can do that. People tend to wallow on bad things that happen. And you talk about TT a lot with the business. And so I just wanted to ask you, just how has losing TT impacted the business? And how do you find the strength to move forward every day? It's still very soon since she's passed.
Yeah, Titi just passed on December 4th. So, the good news is that because we built our business together from scratch, there's not any area in the business that she or I don't know. So in the event years prior when Titi and I were separated, we had to do things by ourselves. That was kind of like training for this time now. Knowing what it feels like to not be with my sister, running a business independently of her. And then to bring that expertise and skill set from me back to a business that Titi and I created together, thank God we had those prior lessons together and separate and apart. So when something like this happens where my sister is not here anymore, I'm prepared. And, you know, between the business and me personally, the business is fine. It's just me because my mornings are tough. But how do I, carry on? It's tough, you know. Titi wasn't just my business partner. She was everything. And Titi, I mean, she was so extraordinary. She was an extraordinary beauty. She was extraordinarily smart. She was extraordinarily innovative. You met her in person. To be around her, she was so dynamic. So you know, like her.
When she spoke, you could feel it.
You could feel it. So by her not being here, I feel it. My family feels it. And I think many people, to this day, we still get flowers. To this day, we still get condolences for Titi. So on a personal note, you know, Titi comes in forms of heat. When Titi comes, I feel heat. And then that's when the tears come. But you know what? I realize that it's more important for me to tell Titi's story. It's more important for me to carry that business on where Titi invested so much time and genius. For me to just cry all day and not keep this ball rolling would be such a disservice to Titi. And we're not built that way. Titi passed away, but I have to say Titi's contribution, it just outshines, you know, her contribution, her existence while she was on this planet outshines, you know, the event that she's not here with us today. So I have more content when I'm talking about that, when I'm talking about Titi, than I do to put energy into, you know, when she left here. Titi was we borrowed Titi. She was here. Titi came here to do a job. Titi did that job well. I don't know too many people who execute like Titi. And Titi also raised me. And I'm an extension of her, so I am Titi. So I gotta go on.
Definitely. And we thank you for having the strength to tell this story because it's so important. And you touch so many women, not just the women in this room, but I'm sure you feel the love and support that we're all sending your way every day.
I am, and I just wanted to take time out, and I wanted to thank each and every one of you who has sent us love. I feel it. I don't get a chance to talk to all of you guys, but when Titi passed away, like the overwhelming love that you sent our way, my family, my mother, my father, we feel it, my son. And that also gives me strength. And I know you guys still feel Titi's spirit. She's probably here with us right in this room. And I just wanted to say thank you for that.
My last question, before I open up to questions, so if you have a question, just definitely get it ready, is what is one lesson that you want us to take away from your journey?
That all your failures are your successes. All your failures are your stepping stones. You become bigger, stronger, and faster with that wisdom. Don't be afraid to learn the lesson. Pay attention to them. This way, the next time around, you won't do it that way again. And that's how Titi and I built our business. You know, we didn't have the resources. We didn't have the business school. We didn't have the mentor in the traditional sense of the way. So we really had to learn from our mistakes, from our failures, in order to do it right the next time. And every time there was a next time, I really believe that we got better because our school was, you know, experience.
Thank you so much. Let's give Miko a round of applause. Does anyone have questions? Just raise your hand and then you'll come up here and I will give you the microphone. Double question.
Okay. Hi, how are you? My name is Gislina. I run an apparel online business. I sell, you know, shirts, I crochet, et cetera. I have ideas, and I want to know at what point do you get professional help, like hiring a lawyer or branding or paying for a trademark, et cetera, et cetera? Do you get your product out first and see how the public reacts to it, or do you do everything, like all the legal things first?
Well, you have to take a lot of things into consideration. I mean, if there's a demand, is there a demand for your...
Thank God, yes, there is.
So I would definitely encourage you to get your ideas trademarked and get all of your legal affairs in order. It's good to do it when it's not that popular because once it gets popular, those trademarks, that could become an issue if someone is also looking at, some of your ideas. So I would certainly encourage you to get that in line on the front end.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you in person.
Nice
my
to meet
condolences to you.
Thank you.
I know. Oh my God, I'm so soft-spoken. Okay, so I'm originally from Queens, but I live in Atlanta. However, I work in IT and in corporate America. So I decided a few years ago to move up here to take advantage of the market at a lot better pay. But I guess I had 3 questions actually, but throughout the conversation, you actually answered one of them for me. Mm-hmm. But I'm gonna just ask this one that was really important to me. I have a business partner back in Atlanta, and I guess I'm just going to read it off because it will make much more sense if I read it off. Building a business from scratch. If you don't have the resources such as an attorney, contract writer, web developer, PR, marketing, CFO assistant, what do you do? Every one of these experts expect to be paid. So my business partner and I had to literally build a team of people that we knew personally. And they would be in either one or 2 groups. One, they were leaving the corporate world and wanted to be an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Or 2, they were a family member that we involuntarily put them in where they fit in. Okay. Lastly, if someone was slacking in an area, I would sometimes have to come in and out of my lane because I'm just a techie, and I would just come in and do their job and get it done. And
wait, I just want to break it out because I want to answer your question succinctly.
Sure.
So with your friends and family, are you paying them? Or are they? Let's start with that.
Well, it's not me personally, but my partners. My partner, it's her family that she involved in our company to help out in any kind of way. And I guess my question is, as I would come out of my lane and help in other areas where they were maybe slacking and finish the job, it was very tiresome.
Are these friends and family who are being paid? Are they employees, or are they friends and family that required you to come out of your lane?
Well, the family members were not paid. However, if we had an opportunity to make commission if they referred someone to the company, mm-hmm. and that's basically how we would kind of reimburse them. Okay. And give a percentage.
Okay.
Yes. And that's all.
Can I rephrase your question a little
Sure.
bit? I think what she's asking is, how do you get the team members that you need to propel your business forward when you don't have the money to pay them?
So when you don't have money to pay for, services and help, you have to do it yourself. Mm-hmm. And you have to do it yourself. I mean, if you can get the help of friends and family, that's great. We didn't have it. We had each other. But you have to do things yourself until you're able to build enough capital. So you have to write the copy yourself. If you can get someone to write it for you, great. But then that might be a problem because they're going to want to be paid at a certain point. Or if they did you a favor, then you're going to have to do them a favor. So sometimes it's just best that you do it yourself. If you're an entrepreneur, entrepreneurs do things themselves. Do it yourself until you can get someone to do it for you. I would recommend paying people when they do it, or if you're getting people to do things, barter. So it's apples for apples. Once you start getting into the I owe you, that can get complicated, and then it requires you to come out of your lane, and then you're involved in, things that are probably far and separate from your core business. So try to keep your lines really clear. And I would encourage you to try to do things yourself. That's how we did it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We just have to give time for one more question. So Miko will be outside after signing books and things. So yeah.
Hi, thank you. I'm Tanya from Madame Noir. And I guess you touched on some interesting things about scaling up your business. I was wondering if you could dive a little bit more into that maybe offer some tips on how to take a business, not even to Target, let's say, just out of your bathroom.
So for Titi and I, scaling up, we knew the right time to expand our business and to scale up because we were doing things manually. My lady, we were doing things manually till we couldn't do them anymore. And once we felt fatigued, we knew it's time to have someone help. So in terms of like starting a business, we started with no money. We used our talent. Many of us are smart. Many of us are talented. Some of us are good readers. Some of us are good writers. And then I was a good hairstylist. Titi was a good communicator. We created this team, and Titi started telling people like Madame Noir, hey, my sister does good hair. You guys would call me to do a hair shoot. Someone else would find out about us, till slowly we built money. And then it was that slow build that gave us the capital to scale up and to move, our business from one place to another. It was that slow build that gave us the money, to start off at a salon and then be able to, make product and then send our product out to be made. It was that slow build. Yeah. Thank you so much. You're welcome.
Thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And give yourselves a round of applause and give Miko Branch a round of applause.